it is indisputable that rice and beans are healthy for us to eat, especially when paired together, like in this dish, Belizean rice and beans. You're watching the Bear Pantry Show. As you guys remember, the last time we did rice and beans, we did it in the crock pot. Today we're going to do it like I put it in my book, on the stovetop. So in this 10-quart pot, I've washed and I've placed 1 pound or 1 pack of red kidney beans. And I know a lot of Belizean people have told me that they make rice and beans with pinto beans, but I don't recall ever seeing pinto beans when I was a little girl growing up in Belize. So I've always known it to be with red kidney beans, but you can certainly do it with pinto if you'd like. And so here we're just going to put some diced onions and some washed and clean and chopped cilantro. And we're going to get 2 cups of water. See, this cup right here is 2 cups. And we want to add 18 cups. That's the way I have it in the book. I didn't translate it into liters or quarts. And so we're going to do this 2-cup thing here 9 times. So let's get more water in the pot. So I did it 8 times, which makes that 16 cups because these are 2 cups, right? And this is number 9. See how full that pot is? And we're going to allow this to cook on the stove top for about 2 hours. I'm not going to do it in the crock pot this time like I always do, because I want to follow exactly what the recipe says in my book. So here we are, we're going to allow this to cook for 2 hours on the stove top. And when we check back on it, we're going to be adding in the rice and some of the other ingredients. But for right now, it's the onions, the cilantro, the beans, and oh, I'm going to add a little bit of garlic. Give me a sec. Here I have a little bit of garlic on the tip of this knife. You know, I buy my garlic in a bottle, right? Just put a little bit in. If you don't like garlic, you don't have to put it in at all. And so we're going to let this beans cook for the next 2 hours. And when I come back, we'll pick up from where we left off. I wanted you guys to get a chance to see that the rice and beans is, well, the beans actually is cooking on very high fire right now because we want these beans to boil. We're not going to put anything under the pot or turn the fire down until it's time to add the other ingredients, okay? Time to get the pot to the counter so we could add all the other ingredients to continue making the rice and beans. So our beans look kind of dark, right? See? And it has all that bean stock. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about beanstalk water. So what we're going to use a slotted spoon, or you could use a skimmer that has the holes in it. And we're going to remove the beans like this from the stock. We're going to put it into something else, and then we'll see what comes next. This is all we're doing, removing the beans. And as you can probably tell, the beans is not really super duper soft. You can squish it with your fingers. And it's cold because I allowed it to cook actually for about 2.5 hours, because sometimes beans will take longer depending on how old the beans are, and you don't know how old they are when you get them from the store. One way to tell though is if the beans look like really dark when you're getting it and it's not black beans you're buying, then leave that alone. You want it with a lighter color to it because that seems to be fresher beans, according to Joe. I don't really know if that's true, but according to Joe. But I found too that if I buy it like that, it does seem a little bit fresher when they're a little bit pinker in color. I'm talking about red kidney beans specifically. So all I'm doing is take out all the beans because we want to add the correct amount of liquid back to this pot so we could cook this rice and beans to perfection. So now I'm going to measure the long grain white rice, and we're going to get 6 cups in this bowl because we want to get it washed before we start adding everything back to the pot. So this is what we do to our stock. We want to pour it in a measuring cup. This is only going to give us 2 cups. We want 2.5 cups. So we're not going to throw the rest away right now because we want to get our 1/2 cup. So let me get another measuring cup. So let's get the 1/2 cup. Then I'm not going to throw out the rest of this stock that's left over. I'm going to put it aside in case we need it. So we're going to add back all our beans. And remember, this is 1 pound or 1 pack of red kidney beans. That's cooked for 2 to 2.5 hours on the stovetop. This is our 6 cup of white rice. 6 cups. This is going to feed a lot of people, okay? So let's get all our white rice in. And then we want to start adding back our liquids. So the first thing that we're going to add will be our coconut milk. This is a 13.5 fluid ounce. I think that's the way all of them measure, no matter what the brand is. We're going to add all of our coconut milk because this makes the rice and beans very rich. And if you can notice when we move it around with a spatula, there's not like more rice overpowering the beans or more beans overpowering the rice. We're always trying to get like a good medley. And the less rice you have to the amount of beans, your rice and beans is going to look redder and richer. I don't think redder is a word, but you guys know what I mean. So now it doesn't have enough water, so we want to add our stock back. This is the 1/2 cup, and this is the 2 cups. See, I'm trying to do it precisely how I have it in the book because I worked really hard for a long time to try to get this measurement correct for you guys. And now, at this point, you're going to want to add your salt and your pepper, but I'm not going to add it just yet because I want to show you the measurement. Remember I told you guys, let me see if Jada can get this, that this is a good way of measuring this line on the tip of your finger. Like when you go down into the pot, your tip of your finger touch the top of the rice, and it's supposed to not go above that line. See? Can you see it, Jada? See that line right there? The tip. I'm not touching the bottom of the pot, I'm touching the top of the rice. And see the line? And I did make a dipstick for us when we did the white rice. And if we can pick this up, I measured the tip of my finger to there and I etched a spot in the spoon. So this is my dipstick spoon now. You may want to do that, get a, what do you call this, a rubber or a nylon spoon and etch something in it. So now we're going to go measure. Let's see if Jada can get this. Let me find the top of the rice. There. Let's see where our dipstick says. Perfect. So right there. So this is not too much liquid, this is just enough. And you're going to do this with any size pot that you use. If you're making less rice and beans and you use a smaller pot, you're going to want to get your little dipstick out. Let me get it cleaned off and dry again so we can measure it again. So here we go. Let's find the top of the rice, and there. That's the top. See? It's always good with any kind of rice, white rice, rice and beans, whatever rice you're doing, when you want to know the correct measurement, the ratio of water to solid, you want to measure. I don't know why that body part works, but I figured that out years ago, and it was a friend of mine that told me, Barbara, you're the one that taught me how to cook rice by that measurement with the fingertip, and I've never gone wrong. And I was like, wow, if I showed her how to do that, then maybe I can teach other people to cook. You know, that was one of my motivating factor. Hi, Lisa. That goes out to you. The salt that we're adding, I'm adding 6 teaspoons, but you might want to add like 3. That's a little bit more, so we're going to have to put less. You might want, and this ideally you measure in like another bowl so you don't make mistakes. But you might want to add like 3, taste it, add more, taste it, like that. So let me get the rest of the salt in. Again, black pepper and stuff is always to your taste, but for this amount, I'm gonna put like 2 tablespoons, so it could be spicy. So there goes our black pepper. You always want to add your salt and your black pepper last, because let's say you were putting some kind of salt meat in this, like ham or ham bone or pigtails or something like that. That would have already added some salt to the pot. So you always want to add the salt and the pepper last before you put this on the stove to cook. So now let's get this on the stove, and we're going to allow all this to come to a boil for about 15 or 20 minutes before we start turning the fire down and doing different things to mute the fire. I wanted to show you how high the flames are within the first 20 minutes of putting the rice on. And this is not going to burn the rice and beans, because my pot's kind of thick. When you're doing any kind of rice, even if it's white rice, you kind of want a thick pot. Look at the rim right here. See, it's not a very thin pot. And so that's why I don't have any issues with the rice burning, when some of the viewers have complained that it burns pretty quickly no matter how low they put the fire. It's because you really want to invest in a really good thick pot and not have those little thin ones that you can pick up for cheap at the local stores. I don't want to name names. But anyways, this is, you know, it looks old and raggedy, but there's nothing peeling off on the inside with the non-stick, and it's very thick, and you can see it's been about 7 minutes, and our rice and beans is starting to boil here. This right here is the leftover bean stock. When I first started to cook the beans, I did start with about 18 cups of water, and throughout the 2.5 hours, I added in like 6 more cups of water to make sure that the beans wouldn't burn, because it was cooking pretty fast on the stovetop. And so these are just the leftover. And if we hadn't put the coconut milk in the rice and beans, because you can absolutely make rice and beans without coconut milk. If we hadn't put it in, then we would have used all of this bean stock. And so the leftover, you don't worry about it, just toss it out, because we have enough in the pot right now to make the rice and beans cook. This is about 10 minutes later, and I'm using a fork that you would serve ham or stuff with. I call it like a 2-prong fork. And we're just kind of moving the rice around. We're not digging on the bottom of the pot, okay? Just kind of moving the rice around. You don't have to do this at 10 minutes. You can do this at 20 minutes, but I'm just doing it to show you that everything is cooking evenly in the pot. While we wait for the rice and beans to cook, let me give you a few suggestions as to what you can eat this meal with. You can do stewed chicken, baked chicken, stewed beef. You can do it with turkey. You can do it with even fried fish, because I've seen some people make the fried fish even though the fish is dry or well done. They will make like an onion, tomatoes, some type of saute to put over the rice and beans, and it tastes pretty good. So there's a whole number of things that you can do with this delicious meal. This is 20 minutes later, and this is when you really want to use the fork to get things moving around. You can see that almost all the water is cooked out of the rice, not completely because it's not dry as a bone to the bottom, but it's definitely not covering the top like when we first started. So at this point, if you don't own one of these heat diffusers or simmerings, you're going to definitely want to turn your fire down to medium, because you don't want it to start burning. But what I'm going to do, and I've spoken with you before about getting a heat diffuser or a simmering off of Amazon, or maybe your local store will have it too, like the little mom and pop local supermarkets might have it. So I put my simmering. See, the fire is still high, but I put my simmering on it, and what it does is diffuses the flames, and I call it mutes. So then you want to put the rice back on this, and then you want to get your lid. Put your lid on. Remember, if you don't have that simmering, you're going to turn your fire down to medium at this point. But right now I keep my fire on high, or my flames on high, and I put the simmering on to diffuse and mute the flames. And I'm going to watch this for 5 minutes. We don't want to walk away at this point, because it's right at the point where you want to start tempering with the flames or the fire, okay? I'm not sure you can hear that, but it's kind of popping now, and you don't want that, because then it's going to start burning even with my simmering. So at this point, I'm going to turn my heat down to medium on my stove, even with the simmering. At that point, you want to monitor yours to see how the medium's doing. If not, you could turn it down a little bit lower, because what's going to happen now, we want the rice to start, we call it soaking in Belize, but I guess the proper terminology for it would be that it's actually swelling and cooking. So we want to turn it. Again, we're not digging on the bottom of the pot. This is our first time turning it. It was about 5 minutes since I showed you that I last messed with it. So this is about 5 minutes. So I would say this is about 30 minutes into the cooking of this rice and beans. Just kind of want to move it around. See, the rice is still uncooked, so this is nowhere near done. And we're going to come back and check on this in about 15 minutes. Remember, I turned my heat down to medium. You may have to turn yours down to low if you don't have a simmering and your stove cooks kind of fast. So we're going to let the lid stay on. We're going to be back to check on this in 15 minutes. This is about 20 minutes later, and I stirred it one more time already. You know, you can't over stir this. Don't let anybody tell you you're not supposed to mess around with the rice. You can come and move it around with that fork as often as you need to loosen up any clumps that are forming and not cooking well. So it's still not ready, but it's more done than not. We'll check in again in another 10 minutes. I'm going to show you this roast on another video. I'm going to separate the videos so you can see how Joe does this roast, but if you hear a noise going on in the background, some frying and stuff, Joe's browning that roast right now while I do rice and beans. And we're making this as a meal today. We're going to have some kind of garden salad with it. This is going to be our carb. That's going to be our protein. And we'll have some kind of cooked vegetables or garden salad with it. So that's what's going on. There's always some activity going on here when we're cooking. It's not just one pot that's going. Sometimes I'm doing one show, but we have other things going on. I wanted you to see one more time what the flames look like It's right here between medium and low on my stove. It's not quite low, it's not quite medium. And it has the simmering that's diffusing everything. And this rice is cooking up very nicely. We're stirring our rice again, just moving it around. It's smelling good and it's looking good and it's not burning. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes since we put the rice and beans back on the stove.
You see how it look nice and fluffy? That's because you put the right amount of water in it, see? Nice and fluffy.
So I did good with my measurement then?
You good with the measurement. I teach you good.
You teach me well and I learn well, right?
That's right.
Well, let's hope that the viewers are catching on to this too, because that's all the trick is to rice and beans. The correct ratio of liquid to solid. And I showed you so much more instructions in there of how to measure that liquid no matter what amount you're cooking or what size pot you're using. Okay, put the lid back on. And this is, like I said, an hour and 15 minutes. How much longer, Joe?
Let's see. We'll see right now.
He's gonna taste one of the grains of the rice, so he can, because the beans is cooked. You don't have to worry about that part. It's the rice you have to worry about.
Not bad.
Yeah, but how much longer?
We'll wait another 10 minutes and take it out.
10 minutes? Okay. Look at this nice, loose, beautiful rice and beans. Not clammy, not too wet, not dry. The rice is not hard to where it's gonna damage your teeth or your fillings. Beautiful. Now let's see what we're gonna serve it with. This is what we decided to pair the rice and beans with, some roast beef that Joe made. And we're gonna add something green, like maybe some steamed broccoli or some green beans or maybe a garden salad with some spinach in it, just to get some fiber. And this is our wonderful medley for today to celebrate my oldest son's Joshua's birthday. I wanted you guys to see how much we got from that recipe that we did. 1 pound of beans, 6 cups of rice, and it gave us this nice aluminum foil throwaway pan here full. It'll serve upwards of 20 people, 20 to 24 people if you're serving half a cup to each guest. If you're serving a cup, then it'll serve less. But other than that, you can always make this recipe and put up the leftovers, or you could do half the recipe if you don't have too many people that you're making this for. I hope that this time I was successful with putting more instructions in this video to make the rice and beans on the stovetop. I hope that no matter the age, no matter the nationality, that you guys are going to be able to make perfect rice and beans, because it's not hard. I used to think that it was very hard before I learned, and then Joe worked with me, and I put all my fears aside, and I was able to make the rice and beans. And then while I was creating the book, I decided to measure everything every step of the way and time it, just like I did with you guys today. I wanted it to feel like you guys were right here with me in the kitchen and you were right there at the stove turning that rice each and every time that we went to the stove and turned it. Now this big pot will serve quite a few people. So if you want to make it for maybe 5 or less, you'd want to do half this amount, okay? Thank you so much for watching, because I really value your time, and I know it takes time out of your busy schedule to watch the show, and I really appreciate the fact that you do. Thank you so much for subscribing, because that really helps a lot in keeping faithful return viewers. And thank you for picking up the book. Until I see you again, take care.